In the quiet stillness of the medieval morning, while the world sleeps under a blanket of mist, our knight begins their day not with grand adventures, but with the familiar rhythm of responsibility. The armor may gleam, but the path ahead is one of duty repetition and quiet strength. The knights we picture in stories, galloping across the battlefield with swords raised high, are often celebrated for their feats of courage and valor. But behind the shining armor and bold titles, there is a life that demands much more than bravery. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires a quiet form of strength that often goes unnoticed by the loud songs of glory. As the first light of day begins to peek over the castle walls, it is not the sound of trumpets announcing a victorious battle that fills the air. Instead, it is the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, the distant clanging of tools, and the quiet stirrings of a world still waking. Nights rise early before the sun is even fully up, as part of a daily routine that is both mundane and necessary. Their chambers, though grand by the standards of the time, are cold and austere. In the early hours, made colder by the stone walls and the thin blankets that only just manage to keep out the chill. The first task, a simple one, but no less important. The knight must prepare, not for battle, at least not yet. No, the first step is far more ordinary, preparing themselves and their equipment for whatever the day may bring. Armor must be checked for damage, polished to a gleam, and adjusted to fit the knight's body, a process that takes time and care. Each movement in this ritual is deliberate and slow, an acknowledgement that even the smallest detail matters. It may seem tedious, but in this seemingly insignificant act lies the essence of a knight's life. The mundane must be done before the extraordinary can even be considered. Without proper preparation, the grandest feats would never come to fruition. Perhaps in some ways it's a little like our own daily routines. You might not be putting on armor or checking a sword, but we all have our own versions of this ritual. The first cup of coffee, the quiet moments before the chaos of the day takes over. Maybe it's checking your phone, answering an email, or making sure your shoes are polished just right before stepping into the world. For the night, the day begins with these small but necessary tasks. They are the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without them, the night would not be able to face the challenges ahead. And yet, while many of us might wish to skip past these moments to get to the good stuff, the exciting meetings, the big projects, the adventure, there is something profound in these quiet, steady moments. Knights had their share of glamour, no doubt. But it was through their daily routines, the seemingly dull repetition of tasks, that they truly earned their place. This rhythm of life is where the real strength lies, not in the battles or the celebrations. Now imagine for a moment that you too are part of this routine. You rise early long before the world has had time to fully wake. You slip into your own version of armor, your morning routine, and prepare yourself for the tasks ahead. Maybe it's a quick breakfast, a moment to catch up on the news, or a brief conversation with someone you care about. In these small steps, there is strength. There is quiet determination. The knight doesn't race to the battlefield. Instead, they begin their day with care, knowing that their strength will not come from charging headlong into danger, but from the slow, steady rhythm of the tasks they must complete. And so, as we walk through the day in the life of a knight, let's take a moment to appreciate these quiet beginnings. For it is in them that the foundation of true strength is built. As the first light of dawn stretches across the horizon, casting long shadows over the stone walls of the castle, the night begins their day, not with the thunderous charge of battle, but with the simple yet necessary preparations that form the foundation of their life. The morning is calm, quiet, far removed from the clanging of swords and the cries of victory that we so often associate with knightly glory. In the cool and dimly lit chambers of the castle, the knight slowly awakens from their slumber. The bed, though large and impressive, is far from the plush comfort of a modern bedding. It's a simple, narrow mattress atop a wooden frame, and the cold stone floor beneath offers little warmth. But it is here, in these humble surroundings, that the night's day truly begins. There's no need for an alarm clock, no pressing deadlines, no rush to start the day. The night wakes naturally well before the sun fully rises. The hours before daylight are devoted to preparation, both physical and mental. The night must rise early to maintain the rigorous discipline required of their role. Time is a luxury they cannot afford. First, the knight attends to their personal matters. They clean their face wash with cold water and prepare themselves for the day ahead. In a time long before the convenience of modern hygiene, such tasks are more than just routine. They're a necessary part of maintaining both health and morale. Water must be drawn from the well, often requiring an early visit to the courtyard or the castle's well, where servants or squires may already be working collecting water to distribute for the household. In the absence of running water, this task is a far cry from the ease with which we grab a glass of water from the tap today. It's a small but significant reminder of the physical labor woven into every part of the knight's life. Next comes the knight's armor. This isn't a simple matter of grabbing a sword and rushing into battle. It's a careful, deliberate process. The knight checks their armor for dents or rust, ensuring that it's in working order for whatever challenges the day may bring. The heavy, polished metal of their chest plate is laid out before them, along with their gauntlets, greaves, and helmet. Each piece requires attention, as armor is both protective and symbolic. It's an extension of the knight's identity, a constant reminder of the responsibilities they carry. The preparation is slow, measured, even meditative. The armor doesn't simply go on. It is adjusted, strapped in place, and checked for comfort. A knight might need the assistance of a squire or a servant for certain pieces, like securing the shoulder guards or tightening the straps. It's a task that may take hours, especially when they must ensure that every part of their armor fits perfectly and comfortably. This isn't a rushed process. The knight knows that time spent on their armor is time well spent. Each piece of metal, each strap and buckle, is an important part of their readiness. It is this attention to detail that often separates a successful knight from one who falters in battle. But beyond the practical, there is something comforting about this routine. It's not exciting, but it's necessary. It's a moment of peace in a life that often demands chaos. While the knight prepares, perhaps a squire or servant brings in a simple meal, a small loaf of bread, a hunk of cheese, and maybe a small bowl of porridge. There is no feast, no lavish breakfast to start the day. Just enough to sustain the night through the morning's activities. Knights of this time didn't have the luxury of leisurely meals or expansive choices. What they ate was simple and filling with no room for the indulgences of today's breakfasts of avocado toast or gourmet coffee. It's a reminder of how much more practical the medieval diet was and how little comfort these knights had compared to our modern conveniences. After a modest meal, the knight may take a moment to check on their horse, which is housed in the stables nearby. The knight's bond with their steed is strong, as horses are both transportation and companions in their adventures. Grooming the horse is yet another part of the knight's routine. It's not a glamorous task. Brushing the horse's coat, cleaning their hooves, checking their saddles. But it is essential. The bond between knight and horse is vital, not just for practicality, but also for the knight's morale. Without their steed, a knight is nothing more than a soldier. The horse is both a tool and a symbol of their identity. Once the knight has finished these morning rituals, the day's true work can begin. They may be called upon to oversee the castle's fortifications, ensure that the guards are in place, or attend to the needs of their lord and the people they serve. While knights are often thought of as warriors, their role within the castle community is multifaceted. They are also stewards of the land, leaders of men, and keepers of peace within their domain. This work, too, must be done with patience and diligence, even if it lacks the excitement of a battlefield. As the day slowly stretches into the late morning, the knight is ready. Ready not for a battle, but for the steady, uninterrupted routine of their life. And while we may dream of knightly adventures, glory on the battlefield, fame, and fortune, there's a certain peace in knowing that even the most heroic lives are built upon the slow, steady work of routine. And perhaps, just for a moment, we might think about our own mornings, how much of our own lives are built upon these seemingly simple, mundane moments. After the slow, deliberate start to their day, the knight now faces one of the most consistent and rigorous parts of their routine training. This is where the real work begins, where the knight's strength, skill, and stamina are developed, not through dramatic moments of heroism, but through hours of repetitive practice, sweat, and discipline. The training ground, much like the knight's chamber, is far from glamorous. It's a simple space, often marked with nothing more than worn grass, dirt, and perhaps a few wooden targets for practice. There are no perfectly manicured fields or high-tech gymnasiums like we might see today. The knight's workout is shaped by what is available to them: a wooden sword, a rough training spear, a shield made of solid wood, and the unforgiving elements of nature. The knight spends a significant portion of their day training in sword play. The goal is not to wield a sword in the heat of battle, but to make sure the knight's body is fully prepared for combat. When the moment arises, sword fighting is a complex art, one that demands both physical strength and mental focus. Knights practice their strikes, their parries, and their footwork over and over again, refining their movements until they become second nature. There's nothing glamorous about it. No cheers from an imaginary crowd. No thrilling final blow moment. Instead, it's hours spent in the repetition of a single movement, each swing of the sword growing more precise with each passing hour. At times, the knight will train with a partner engaging in mock duels. These sessions are not about proving who is the better warrior, but about sharpening each other's skills. The strikes come fast and hard, and yet there's a rhythm to it. almost like a dance. The knight's muscles burn with the exertion, but they must press on, for every motion counts. This is the real work of the knight, not the glory of battle, but the grinding work of becoming battle ready. The repetition of these movements can be grueling. Over and over again, the knight will swing their sword, focusing on form, balance, and speed. The physical toll is immense. Each swing of the sword requires strength, precision, and a strong core. And the knight isn't just practicing with a sword. They must also train with their shield, which can weigh a considerable amount. They learn how to use the shield to block, to parry, and to protect themselves from attacks. The effort is exhausting, but the knight must endure. Training also includes horsemanship. A knight's horse is as much a partner in combat as their sword. Riding and controlling a horse in the heat of battle requires immense skill and practice. Knights spend hours each day riding, learning how to maneuver their horses with ease, how to control them at high speeds, and how to remain steady in the saddle while wielding their weapons. Riding is not a leisurely activity. It's a skill that requires focus, strength, and coordination. The bond between knight and horse is a crucial part of their training, and it's not something that can be developed overnight. This repetitive training isn't just physically demanding, it's mentally taxing too. The knight must maintain their focus constantly, striving for improvement. Every session, while seemingly the same as the one before, offers a chance for growth. They must push themselves further, each time knowing that they are not simply preparing for the next battle, but for the possibility of saving a life or losing their own. It's a mental and emotional investment, as much as it is a physical one. The training regimen is brutal and unrelenting, but it's necessary. The knights' bodies must be ready for whatever the world throws at them. Every sword swing, every hour spent riding, and every drill they do is part of a larger picture, a life built on skill, patience, and preparation. And yet, despite the rigor of this routine, the knight finds moments of reflection. The quiet hours spent perfecting their craft may feel lonely or exhausting, but in them lies the foundation of a warrior's strength. In a way, there's something incredibly familiar about this experience. We all have something we need to practice, whether it's a sport, a job, or a skill. It may seem mundane, repetitive, and sometimes tedious, but like the knight, we know that true progress comes not from the grand moments, but from the steady, quiet work done behind the scenes. And just as the knight's sword is honed by countless hours of practice, so too are our own skills, sharpened by the time and effort we put into our routines. Imagine for a moment if you had to train like a knight with all the repetition and intensity of their daily drills. How would your own endurance be tested? What routine do you have in your life that requires the same kind of commitment? While we may not wield a sword, we all have something we must practice every day, whether it's our profession, our health, or our personal growth. The strength of the knight lies in the persistence to push through each day, no matter how difficult or dull it might seem. Now, after hours of training, the knight takes a break. They pause for a moment of rest before diving into the next round of responsibilities and duties. This brief respite is not one of leisure, but of preparation for the tasks ahead. And in this quiet moment, after the hard work of training, the knight is ready for whatever comes next. While we often imagine knights as brave warriors charging into battle, clad in armor and wielding weapons, their daily lives were filled with duties that were far less glamorous. Being a knight was not simply about glory on the battlefield, it was also about responsibility, leadership, and governance beyond swordplay and jousting. Knights were stewards of land, leaders of men, and sometimes even judges. At the heart of the knight's role was the responsibility of managing their estate. This wasn't a simple matter of owning land. It was about overseeing everything that happened on that land. A knight was tasked with ensuring that the crops were harvested, the peasants were working, and the castle was secure. This might sound less exciting than charging into battle, but it was the backbone of a knight's day-to-day life. It required a keen eye for management and a sense of justice that went beyond the realm of combat. Each day, the knight would make rounds of their estate, inspecting the fields, the barns, and the livestock. They would speak with their tenants, ensuring that everyone was doing their part to maintain the land. The knight's duties were not just limited to the physical upkeep of the estate. They also had to ensure that the economic and social systems ran smoothly. They were the ones who decided how resources were distributed, who managed disputes between tenants, and who ensured that taxes and rents were paid. Knights were often expected to make judgments on matters of law as well. In times of peace, their role extended to serving as mediators or judges in disputes, whether between neighboring landowners or within the castle walls. A knight's word was final, and they had to maintain a sense of fairness and justice. This wasn't always easy, as tensions often ran high, and decisions had consequences that could affect the livelihoods of many people. Their decisions were not made in a vacuum. The knight would often meet with their advisors, trusted counsel, who helped to navigate the complexities of the land they governed. These meetings were not dramatic council sessions like we see in movies, but quiet, thoughtful discussions, usually held in a chamber, far removed from the excitement of battle. Here, the knight would listen to reports about the estate's condition, take stock of the crops, and perhaps deliberate on the best course of action in times of conflict. These meetings were often long and required the knight to be both patient and discerning. This level of responsibility often required knights to be highly organized. They had to balance their martial duties with their administrative ones, ensuring that the needs of the estate and its people were met, while also being prepared for any threats that might arise. There were no assistants to take care of these tasks. Everything was managed by the knight themselves, with the help of a few servants or squires. One of the more unglamorous duties of a knight was overseeing the work of their serfs, the peasants who worked the land. The knight would often have to make sure that the peasants were fulfilling their obligations and working the land as required. In some cases, knights might even be responsible for ensuring that peasants paid their rents on time. While this task may seem dull compared to the excitement of battle, it was vital to the functioning of the estate. Without the hard work of the peasants, the knight's estate would not thrive, and so it was the knight's responsibility to manage their relationships with these individuals, ensuring that things ran smoothly. But knights weren't just involved in administrative tasks. Their role also required them to be leaders in times of peace, guiding the men who served under them. This could include training their soldiers, overseeing the construction of fortifications, or ensuring that the defenses of the castle were in working order. In times of war, these same men would look to their knight for guidance on the battlefield. But in times of peace, It was the knight's leadership and ability to manage their estate that made them valuable. And yet, despite the quiet nature of these duties, there were moments of tension. The knight had to balance the needs of their people with the realities of governance. They were often called upon to resolve conflicts, settle disputes, and sometimes even defend their honor or the honor of their lord. This might involve making decisions that were not easy, decisions that could affect their reputation or their standing within the community. In these moments, we see another side of the knight. It's not the fearless warrior rushing into battle, but the patient leader making tough decisions with a steady hand. It is a quiet strength, one that relies not on the might of a sword, but on the ability to lead, to guide, and to maintain peace. After hours of training, managing estates, and making tough decisions, the knight's day might seem to slow down a little. At least one might expect it to. However, the life of a knight was filled with little leisure. While they might sit down for a meal, the concept of free time was a distant dream, often pushed aside by the heavy weight of their responsibilities. It's a world far removed from our modern concept of lunch breaks or vacations. And yet, even in these small moments of respite, knights would find fleeting glimpses of peace. By midday, after the early morning preparations and grueling hours of practice, the knight might finally sit down to eat. But even this was not the leisurely affair that many might imagine. In fact, a knight's midday meal was often simple and utilitarian, designed more for sustenance than enjoyment. Bread, cheese, and perhaps a small portion of stew or meat were the staples of the knight's diet. While these meals were sufficient for fueling the body, they were far from extravagant. There were no large banquets with multiple courses or exotic fruits, just the bare essentials to get through the day. Meat was often reserved for special occasions or larger feasts, so bread and vegetables were the primary components of a knight's regular meals. The simplicity of the meal reflects the simplicity of the knight's life. For many, this midday break would occur either alone or with fellow knights. Though conversations were rarely focused on leisure, instead, discussions might revolve around the tasks of the day or plans for the future. At times, the knight might even spend this brief meal catching up on the work they had neglected earlier, reviewing documents, writing letters, or discussing strategy with other members of the castle. There's something to be said about this lifestyle, the simplicity and focus on necessity. Today, many of us find ourselves rushing through lunch breaks, gobbling down fast food between meetings or emails, trying to squeeze relaxation into a tight schedule. The knight, however, had little time for such indulgences. Their meals were practical, and their moments of leisure were brief, if they existed at all. There's a certain humbling quality in that, a reminder that not every day can be filled with excitement or luxury, yet even the most disciplined knights were not without some form of respite. These moments were often small but precious. Perhaps after their meal, they might walk around the castle grounds or take a brief moment of rest. If they were fortunate, they could spend a few moments sitting in the garden or taking in the view from the castle walls, watching the world go by. But these moments were few and far between. A knight's life was one of constant duty, and even these brief respites were often cut short by the urgent demands of their position. Interestingly, knights did have opportunities to engage in certain leisure activities, but they were often linked to their role as warriors. Tournaments and jousts were held to showcase the knight's skill and bravery. But these events were more about honor and competition than true relaxation. For many knights, participating in these tournaments was both a duty and a chance to gain fame or prove their strength. They weren't simply participating for fun, they were competing for honor, reputation, and sometimes rewards. Even these leisure activities were built on the foundation of hard work and skill. It's also important to note that knights, being part of the noble class, had access to some forms of entertainment, though these were far from the modern distractions we might expect. A knight might attend a feast or a gathering where music, poetry, or dancing was performed, but these events were usually formal and heavily structured. There was no casual relaxation here, no impromptu gatherings for fun. The knight's participation in these social events was often a matter of duty, ensuring that they maintained their status and their alliances with other nobles. In contrast to the busy, sometimes stressful days of medieval knights, today's routines are filled with many more moments of downtime. We can choose to take a break, watch a show, or visit a coffee shop, knowing that we have access to an abundance of distractions and comforts. But for the knight, their moments of rest were brief, and leisure came only after fulfilling all their other responsibilities. At times, this lack of free time and the constant demands on their energy could be exhausting. However, it was through this disciplined, tireless work that the knight earned their place in history. While we might envy the apparent freedom of modern life, there is something admirable about the quiet strength required to dedicate oneself so fully to a cause, whether that cause is defending a kingdom or managing a piece of land. The knight's life may not have been filled with luxuries or indulgences, but it was one of deep purpose, discipline, and unwavering commitment to duty. As the day begins to fade and the sun dips below the horizon, the knight's work is far from over. The evening, while quieter than the bustling morning, is often just as demanding. While we may think of the evening as a time for rest and relaxation, for the knight, it's another chapter of their disciplined routine. After hours of swordplay, managing their estate, and fulfilling their duties, the knight is far from ready to settle down for a peaceful night. In many ways, the evening shift marks a transition. The knight's body, already fatigued from hours of physical exertion, now faces another round of work, often in the form of more training. The evening's training may not be as intense as the morning, but it's still an essential part of maintaining the knight's physical readiness. This could include more rounds of sword practice, perfecting footwork, or practicing defensive maneuvers with their shield. These additional drills are necessary to ensure that the knight's skills remain sharp and that they are always prepared for what the next day may bring. But this evening, training is not always focused on combat. Knights must also practice their mental discipline, for a knight's mind is as crucial as their body in battle. Some evenings, a knight might engage in strategic discussions, perhaps with fellow knights or commanders, about the state of the kingdom or the defense of the castle. They may review battle tactics, discuss upcoming military campaigns, or prepare for the possibility of a siege. These discussions are not filled with the excitement of actual combat, but the stakes are just as high. The knight must stay mentally alert, planning ahead, and always thinking of what might come next. In the midst of this, the knight must also be vigilant. Even as the world grows darker and the stars twinkle above the castle, there is always the looming possibility of danger. The knight is part of the castle's security and they must remain alert to any signs of trouble. This could mean keeping watch over the castle walls or ensuring that the guards are in their proper positions. There are no quiet nights for a knight. The possibility of a threat, whether it be from a rival knight, marauding bandits, or a political foe, always looms. The knight must be ready to act at a moment's notice, and this requires constant vigilance. As the castle grows quiet and the last traces of sunlight fade into the horizon, the knight might be called to the ramparts or the watchtower. There they would stand watch, ensuring that the defenses of the castle remain intact. The cool night air might be a welcome relief after the warmth of the day, but the stillness of the night carries its own weight. Silence broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant sound of an owl fills the air. It is a time for reflection as much as it is for vigilance. The knight's sense of duty never fades, even as the world around them sleeps. Their mind and body remain alert, honed by years of discipline and repetition, while the peasants in the village below might be winding down for the night, heading to bed after a long day of labor. The knight stands firm, ever watchful, knowing that their work is far from over. And yet in these quiet hours, there is a certain peace. The castle is dark, the world around it still, and for a brief moment, the knight can reflect on the day's work, the hum of their daily routine, the repetition of training, the management of their estate, and the overseeing of their men forms a rhythm that feels almost comforting. There is no rush, no urgency, just the steady passage of time, reminding the knight that their strength lies not in grand moments of glory, but in the small, steady actions that they take each day. It is in these quiet moments of vigilance, standing alone under the stars, that the knight finds something essential, a sense of peace in the stillness. While the outside world continues to churn, the knight stands firm, knowing that their duty is to protect, to lead, and to be ever vigilant. This quiet strength is what sets the knight apart from the rest. It's a strength forged not in the heat of battle, but in the quiet moments of responsibility and watchfulness that form the true essence of their role. Imagine for a moment being in the knight's place, standing on the watchtower looking out over the darkened lands, the castle walls casting long shadows on the ground. The only sounds are the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional creak of the castle's wooden beams. It's peaceful in its own way, but it's also filled with purpose. You are the protector, the leader, and the guardian of all within these walls. The stillness of the night is not a time for rest, but a time for reflection, for knowing that tomorrow may bring new challenges, but for now, you have done your duty. As the evening watch concludes and the last patrols are completed, the knight returns to their chamber. The castle, once bustling with the activity of the day, has now fallen silent. The flickering torches that line the hallways are dimming, and the cool night air settles in. The knight removes their armor, piece by piece, a ritual that signals the end of the day's demands. The weight of the metal, which has clung to their body throughout the day, is lifted. The sensation of the cold stone floor beneath their feet is a small comfort, a fleeting moment of relief after hours of standing, walking, and training in heavy armor. The quiet of the room is profound. The knight now, in their simplest attire, takes a moment to breathe deeply, allowing the day's exhaustion to wash over them. This is not the excitement of victory or the relief of a long journey completed. It is the simple peace of knowing that the day's work is done, and tomorrow will bring its own challenges. But for now, there is rest. There is a soft satisfaction in this, a deep, unspoken understanding that their strength lies in the routine they've followed all day, in the quiet diligence with which they performed their duties. Before bed, the knight might take a moment to reflect on the day. There are no grand speeches or loud declarations, just the soft murmur of their thoughts as they think about the tasks that lay ahead. Perhaps they remember a conversation with a squire, a decision made about the estate, or a training session where they felt they could improve. There is no rush to move on to the next task, just a gentle reflection on what has been done. In these quiet moments, the knight may think of the people they serve, the Lord, the peasants, the soldiers who look to them for leadership. They might consider the relationships that bind them to their land, to their home. These relationships are quiet too. Not the flashy camaraderie of battlefield friends, but the steady, dependable connections that provide strength when it is needed most. The knight's chamber, modest as it may be, offers a space for rest. There is no overabundance of luxury, just a simple bed, perhaps a small fire crackling in the hearth, and the soft murmur of the castle settling around them. It's a peaceful solitude that contrasts sharply with the noise of the day. In this calm, the knight can feel their body relax, the weariness from the day's activities, whether from the weight of their armor or the emotional toll of difficult decisions, begins to fade. The muscles that were strained during training begin to soften. The mind that was alert during the hours of responsibility and vigilance now finds peace. And then, as the night settles into their bed, they close their eyes, knowing that their rest will be hard-earned. There are no dreams of heroics or battle. The knight's mind drifts into a deep sleep, replenishing the strength needed for another full day ahead. The quiet of the night is both a comfort and a reminder. Tomorrow the same routine awaits, the work continues, but for now there is stillness, there is peace. As we think of the night lying in bed, perhaps we too can imagine the stillness of our own nights after a long day of work, of responsibilities, and even mundane tasks. We too settle down to rest. Our minds and bodies yearn for the quiet release of sleep, knowing that tomorrow will bring its own rhythm of tasks and routines. And while we may not live the life of a knight, there is something in the quiet of the night that we all share, a deep need for rest, for renewal, and for the energy to face the day ahead. The knight's life, while filled with discipline and duty, also has moments of tranquility. These moments, though small and often overlooked, are essential to maintaining their strength. They are reminders that even in the busiest and most demanding of lives, rest is necessary. It is not a luxury. It is a part of the cycle that keeps everything moving forward. And so as the night sleeps, the cycle begins again. Tomorrow, the training, the duties, and the vigilance will resume. But for tonight, there is peace. As we come to the end of our journey through the day in the life of a knight, we can reflect on the quiet strength that defines them, While their lives were often filled with hard work, routine, and responsibility, it is through this very consistency that their true power was forged. Knights didn't become heroes through grand dramatic moments. They earned their place through the small, often unnoticed tasks that form the foundation of their role. From the early morning routines of preparing armor to the long hours of training, from the duties of managing estates to the quiet moments of reflection. At the end of the day, the life of a knight was one of unwavering discipline and responsibility. There were no shortcuts to their strength, no easy paths to glory. It was a life built on hard work, perseverance, and a deep commitment to duty. In many ways, the knight's life mirrors our own. We may not wear armor or wield swords, but we too have our own routines and responsibilities. We too find strength in the small, quiet moments of our day, the morning rituals, the tasks that need doing, the times of reflection when we take stock of what has been accomplished. And just like the knight, we can find meaning in the mundane purpose, in the repetition, and strength in the discipline required to keep going. So as you drift into sleep tonight, think of the knight resting in the quiet after a long day, preparing for whatever tomorrow may bring. Remember that strength is not always found in grand gestures, but in the quiet, consistent actions that we take day after day. And as you settle into rest, know that the routine of your own life is part of the same quiet strength that knights built their legacy upon. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with the same peace and quiet strength that the knight finds at the end of each long, fulfilling day.